Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sir Hunt on X, a recovering version of the show. Because as I said the other day, I was in a hospital bed trying to recover from this nasty virus that took over my body. But I'm on the road to recovery. The good thing was they found what the problem was, prescribed me the necessary the medications, and now I'm on the road back. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 13th of February 2025. So I'm going to go ahead and get right down to it here a little bit. Excuse me. Still, my breathing is not 100%, but I'm getting there. Better than I was earlier in the week when I couldn't even breathe or even catch some heat because my body was cold, and I mean cold. I had this thing cranked up on Monday and Tuesday. I couldn't even get a sweat going. It's how crazy the whole week was for me. So I'm going to get right down to it here real quick. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Tomorrow, of course, is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all the wonderful Valentines. Earlier today was announced in New York that the New York Jets have basically told Aaron Rodgers they're moving on without him. Problem was, this move was about a year too late. Should have been done last season. But of course, we know how Woody Johnson is. So this comes as no surprise. But in typical Woody Johnson fashion, always, excuse me, always behind the eight ball and always behind the real problem with the entire circumstance. And that's why they're going to be struggling for a long time. Hard to say it because, the Jets have always been the Jets since he took over. That's why back in 2000, when Bill Belichick took the job, he quit after one day. He saw this coming from a mile away, and now that's why we're getting this as a result. So that's why the Jets are the Jets, and they're still going to be the Jets. And as a result, this is what's going to be. I mean, I get it. They hired Aaron Glenn, and he, excuse me, he wanted his new head coach and his new quarterback, his new personnel. But the thing is, this should have been done a year ago. Everybody saw it coming, especially after Rodgers blew out his Achilles. He was never going to be the same after it. Now he's 41 years of age. Good luck down the line, Aaron, because you're going to need it. Of course, they were talking about this, where is he going to go? Talking about him going to Pittsburgh. I don't know what Pittsburgh's going to get out of a 40-something-year-old quarterback as a stopgap. Talking about him going to Minnesota because they're going to need one after Sam Darnold likely walks. So let's see what happens. It's going to be a interesting offseason for him. Honestly, I think every team should just collude and simply say, Aaron Rodgers, get out. We're all done with you. Because his antics are basically not worth him being on a roster spot. Not even as a starter, not even as a backup, not even as a third stringer or even a water boy. It's not worth having a guy like that on your roster because he brings more baggage than what it's worth. So good luck with Aaron Rodgers, because I'd be surprised if he's on an NFL roster or even starting, because I don't think he's good enough to do that anymore. Look at how bad he was last year in New York, and of course the year before that with a torn Achilles. Good luck. So, as I said all along, his legacy is always going to be just being a 40-year-old narcissist, and this is how the offseason is going to be for him. Of course, it turns out they wanted him gone because they didn't want him to be on the Pat McAfee show, but what do you expect? Aaron Rodgers is going to be on any show he wants because he loves the attention. He loves to crap start, and he loves to basically show the world why he's a narcissist and a coward at 40 years of age. He'll never leave the Pat McAfee show because his ego won't let him. Now, of course, we talk about one of the teams interested is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Word came out that they reached out to Jacksonville for their interest in Trevor Lawrence. Question I have is, look at Trevor Lawrence's contract and look at what Jacksonville's asking price is going to be. You think Pittsburgh's going to cough all that up to try and get him? More than likely not. And Jacksonville's not going to swallow that contract because you're talking nearly the contract that something like Jordan Love in Green Bay or Joe Burrow in Cincinnati is getting. And Jacksonville has holes on that roster all over the place. And no way Jacksonville is going to give up Pittsburgh for the equivalent of peanuts. And I know Pittsburgh's going to be in the market for a quarterback because they do this every year. They always look at the veterans for a 1 or 2 year stopgap when they have Justin Fields they can do that with. And that's why they're in the situation they're in. They need to think about a long-term plan and solution at quarterback, because they haven't had one since Ben Roethlisberger retired. And now, as a result, here we are having to go through this again. I talked on a show a few weeks ago with a Pittsburgh fan, and I basically told him, you need to stop asking for these 30-some-odd quarterbacks on the downturn of their career for a 1 or 2 year stopgap till you find someone, because it's not going to work. They need more stability at the quarterback position. And look at some of the top teams in the NFL that have it. I mean, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, just to name a few of them. If you're going to be at a quarterback carousel like that, the way Pittsburgh's been over the last couple of years, you're not going anywhere. So your best bet at this point is not pick up the phone and acquire about quarterbacks, or signing these quarterbacks to a 1 or 2 year stopgaps that's not going to amount to nothing. Maybe take a year and just tank for one of those higher picks. Find a long-term solution like you did with Ben Roethlisberger way back when, and get yourselves back on the winning track. Because stopgaps for quarterbacks, basically on a 1 to 2 year deal, isn't going to get it done, especially these days in the NFL when stability and leadership at that position is basically a must. I mean, they tried their luck with Russell Wilson, didn't work out. They got Justin Fields, who I thought Justin Fields was playing real well until they decided to start Russell Wilson, and I thought that was just a brutal mistake. Look at what happened in the end. I mean, my goodness. I mean, they got just rained twice by Baltimore in the final month of the season, and Wilson didn't necessarily amount to much. Good luck, Pittsburgh, because you're going to have not only have an issue with the quarterback, you have other holes you need to fix. I know you guys were calling for Mike Tomlin's head, which I understand it, but you have holes that you guys need to seriously address. And to get back in the chance of winning at least the AFC North, we have teams like Baltimore and Cincinnati there. It's going to probably be the top two for the while in that division. I know Pittsburgh finished second this season because Cincinnati just decided to crap the bed. But for you guys to go back to the standard of winning Super Bowls, you need to look into a long-term stability at that quarterback position. Find a guy that's going to be a franchise guy moving forward, like you had with Ben Roethlisberger, and move on from there. Because signing free agents on a stopgap for 1 to 2 year deals isn't going to cut it. Now to other news in the AFC North. Of course, it was revealed that Myles Garrett would restructure his contract with Cleveland so he can get out of Cleveland. I mean, I said this on my shows many times, and I even said this 3 years ago before I started this. This is the result of when you make the most ridiculous trade in sports history, the way you did it 3 years ago for Deshaun Watson. Stuff like this was going to happen. And now you're seeing the results. You're seeing the domino effect. Myles Garrett just basically doubled down, tripled down, and even quadrupled down on this stance, saying he wants out of Cleveland because Cleveland's going to go through a total rebuild, and Myles Garrett wants no part of it. And can you blame him? The guy's an elite edge rusher who's going to be 30 this season, and he's talking about wanting to go to teams like, I think one time he mentioned Detroit, another team was Washington, which I think with the way Washington is right now, he'd be the perfect fit because it'll help them probably get closer to over the top, even though they made the NFC title game last season. But this is symbolic of what happens when you make an all-in investment the way you did, fork out the dollars you did for the investment, and not think about the repercussions in the end. That's what's happened in Cleveland with this. This guy, Myles Garrett, has been the face of your franchise since he came into the NFL and since the day the Browns drafted him, and now he wants out. And you guys in Cleveland owe it to him to go to a contender and compete for a Super Bowl because that's what he wants. He'll help anyone on the defensive edge rush. If he goes to Detroit, he'll help him. Put him opposite Aiden Hutchinson if Aiden Hutchinson comes back. That's a vicious duo right there. Go put him in Washington opposite Dante Fowler Jr. That's terror. Even rumors that Philadelphia might make a play for him. Could you imagine that defensive front with Myles Garrett there next to guys like Jordan Davis and Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter, and you saw what he just did to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I mean, there's options there for Myles Garrett. You guys owe it to this man to compete for a Super Bowl for all he's given to your franchise, and for you guys to basically now throw him under the bus. Some of you guys now coming out saying he's not as good as TJ Watt or TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, or Max Crosby after you guys went to bat for the guy. You guys in Cleveland are something else. I mean, I thought I had to deal with it here in Cincinnati, but you guys in Cleveland are something else when it comes to this. Myles Garrett is going to make an impact on a team wherever he goes. I mean, he won't make it with the numbers, but put him on a team with a decent defensive front like Detroit or Philly or Washington. Watch him go. Watch him go. You guys owe it to him because he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. He said that already. You guys don't get it. You guys went to bat for your general manager, Andrew Berry, calling him a salary cap specialist, especially after you forked out the $230 million guaranteed money to Deshaun Watson, which turned out to be the biggest backfire in sports history. Good luck down the line because you guys are going to need it. You owe it to this man to go to a team, and if it takes restructuring that contract, do it. He deserves better than what you guys gave him in Cleveland. I mean, said a lot 3 years ago when you made the trade for Deshaun Watson. That was basically the nail in the coffin. Speaking of more offseason news in Ohio, of course, everybody here in Cincinnati still in a hoopla for many reasons. Well, let's start with this. They're talking about all the things that come out of T. Higgins' tweets saying he'll let us know what he's going to do. Of course, now there's a rumor floating around that he wants a $30 million a year contract, north of $30 million, wants to be a wide receiver number one, that the Patriots are supposedly going to be going all in for him. You know, let's start with this. I expect him to get tagged the second they allow him to get tagged. I expect that to happen. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, but my prediction is I think he gets tagged. Here's where the fun begins. Are you going to tag and negotiate, or are you going to tag and trade? Because that's the only options you have, right, if you do that. Because he's not playing on a second year, on a one-year franchise tag like he did it in 24. No way he's not doing that. Because he bet on himself once, lucked out with it, did well with it. He's not doing it twice. But here's a question that needs to be raised. We have people who will be fine with a franchise tag. Why? Wouldn't it be better if you guys had negotiated a contract with him before you franchised him last season on a short 2 to 3 year deal? So you have to go through the same drama this offseason? It goes to show again why the Bengals fans, the Bengals content creators, the Bengals media people are the reasons why this is happening. Exactly. I told you this throughout the season all along, and I'm doubling down on it. You guys over here in Cincinnati, the fans, the super fans, you content creators, and you media people, Fox 19, 12 KRC, 5 WLWT, 9 CPO, and of course, 1530 ESPN, that idiot Sarah Elise on EBN or whatever the fuck her name is. Excuse my language. And of course, of all the other AM stations here in Cincinnati. All you guys are the reason why this happened. Why? Because 2 years ago, you pushed this narrative to want Joe Burrow, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, and you got it. And like your fellas up north, you guys don't even think about the repercussions. This is the repercussions. Now you guys act like you're the salary cap gurus. You guys now go onto these social media sites like Facebook, X, or whatever, and attack the Bengals website, demanding what the front office should do. I have a solution for you guys right now. And this is for you guys because you guys need this. How about just putting the apps away, finding a freezer, and go living in a freezer for about a month till the official offseason begins? Because you guys need to cool down. Everything's going to be just fine. I say this for this reason. Nothing's going to be done today. Nothing's going to be done when you wake up in the morning. Nothing's going to be done when I'm done with this show. We all know this. Just put the phones away. Go live in the freezer till the official offseason begins. I think it's like March 12th or something like that. And when March 12th comes around, then you can get out of the freezer. Because that's what you guys deserve right now. You guys made this bed when you wanted Joe Burrow, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, on the kickoff of the Kansas City-Detroit game in 2023, when the boot was put to the ball and the ball was in the air and the contract was announced. You guys got what you wanted. And ever since that happened, You guys have tried to force this narrative thinking that's going to happen. This is going to happen. No, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. It takes two to tango. You guys know how the Bengals front office works. I mean, I've seen it for 30 plus years. I know how it works. You guys need to just chill out right now. You got Joe Burrow, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. Got it. Leave it as is. Let the dominoes fall. Quit worrying about what the front office does. Quit worrying about what other teams do. Wait till the offseason begins, whenever the league New Year is. I think it's March 12th. Then we can start worrying about it, because you guys are basically worse than a hot mess right now. I tried to tell you guys for the longest time what the result was going to be. You guys didn't want to listen. You made that bed. Now stay away from me. Go lie in it and just disappear until the offseason starts. Because nothing's going to happen when you guys go on to these apps, when you guys do these interviews on TV, when you guys do these live stream shows or whatever, or podcasts. Why? Because nothing's going to be done when it happens. If you have a problem with it, how about this? How about taking yourselves and going to the Bengals front office and telling them to their face? I want to see someone have the balls to do that. I would love to see someone do that. Let's see who's man enough to do it. I'll get more of that later, because I'll wait until like everybody else. I'm going to wait till the offseason starts. I think it's like March 12th. Someone can correct me on that. And now, of course, speaking of all the free agent trade hoopla, lots of people wanting out traded. Now it's Deebo Samuel wanting out of San Francisco. Where does Baltimore's interested? Which I think would be a decent fit. Not a great fit, but rather decent. Depends on whether or not Deebo Samuel can stay healthy. That's been the only thing that's held Deebo Samuel back. I heard of Pittsburgh and Washington, among others. Of course, the big one is Matthew Stafford wanting. I don't think he wants out. I think the Rams going to try and find a trade partner to get out of Stafford's contract, so they can start the process of trying to find a longer-term solution to that position. Now the rumors flying around that the Giants want him, but the Rams want the Giants. I forgot. I got third overall, something like that. The first-round pick of the Giants for Matthew Stafford. I get it. The price is high, but there's no way the Giants are doing that. They already have their pick in mind, so good luck with that. I know they're probably going to want a quarterback, but I'm not sure they're going to give up a first-round pick for him. I get it. This is probably more posturing and negotiation. You aim high, you start the negotiation, then you come to a head, and then you just go ahead and take care of business and negotiate the deal. I don't think it's going to be a first-round pick. I could see Stafford and the Giants, but think about this. Matthew Stafford with Malik Neighbors, that's going to be a tough duo out there in the New York area if he manages to go to New York. I think it's doable, but no one's going to give up a first-round pick for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who's basically 1 or 2 years away from basically retiring from the NFL. I mean, I get what the Rams are trying to do. It's a negotiating ploy. It's a negotiating tactic, but we know what the end result's going to be. I think he'll probably wind up with the Giants, but not with the price tag that they want. Of course, the offseason is going to start March 12th. I'll probably dive into that later on here when the offseason starts. Rumors, of course, are going to be flying everywhere. And now I'm going to be in the middle of it. I guess I got to do some research and understanding how off seasons work. And no, I'm not a salary cap guru, Cincinnati. Don't even come to me for it, because I will shred your so-called salary cap expertise in front of your face whenever you want. Don't even try me. Shoot, I can do it right now, even though I'm not 100%. That take care of my NFL talk. Just going to divulge in some fight game a little bit. And, of course, tomorrow night, standout fight in the lightweight division. Denis Berinchyk versus Keyshawn Davis. Of course, the wild events that took place the last couple of days in the press conference, the shove, the near altercation at the weigh-in. Of course, we know what triggered it. I won't get into it because I won't use a platform for it. But this is the moment Keyshawn Davis has looked for, waited for, and tomorrow night is his chance to take advantage of it. Now, let me remind you, this Berinchyk guy is no pushover. The guy just beat Emmanuel Navarrete not too long ago. I mean, that's just what you need to know about Denis Berinchyk. But Davis has a kind of potential to, I think, be something special. And here's his chance a Norfolk, Virginia native, the home of the late Pernell Whitaker. And like Whitaker, he has a chance to win a world title for Norfolk, Virginia against a very, very strong and durable fighter in Berinchyk. I think this one's going to be a much better fight than people think. I'm appalled how many people are already writing off Berinchyk in this fight. I'm not expecting Berinchyk to win because I think Davis is a supremely talented fighter and is going to show when a fight comes. But I think this fight will be much better than people think. I think Berinchyk's experience at the championship level is going to show here a little bit. He's going to do anything and everything he can to defend his title and fight off whatever Davis can bring to the table. I think Davis eventually is going to get the win. But I think it's going to be a tougher fight than people think. I don't have an official knockout or decision prediction. I don't know much yet. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the fight. But I think it's going to be a much better fight. And I'm appalled how many people are writing Denis Berinchyk off. It's the wrong thing to do because Keyshawn Davis is immensely talented. He's had 2 explosive knockouts in his last 2 fights. And I get it. Everyone in the community has been fixated on him. I got it. But Berinchyk is no slouch. I mean, he didn't win this world championship for nothing. I mean, he just beat Emmanuel Navarrete. That's saying a whole lot. And of course, more hub in the heavyweight division. Because now all of a sudden, all you guys in the community, again, think Oleksandr Usyk is a top 5 all-time great heavyweight. The guys fought twice at, I think, a handful of times at heavyweight. And the wins are basically, I can think of I want to say Billu was one of them. Daniel Dubois and the 2 Fury fights. How does that put a guy in the top 5 all-time as a heavyweight? I mean, forget Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis. They're all the way up here. How are you going to rate this guy over fighters like Lennox Lewis, George Foreman, Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, Joe Frazier, Evander Holyfield, and the list goes on? I mean, I love Oleksandr Usyk, and everybody knows he's my number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, bar none, period. Okay? He's number 1 in the world pound for pound. As a cruiserweight, you can put him number 1. I don't have a problem with it. I'd probably give the nod to Evander Holyfield, but to me, it's 1A and 1B flip-flop. But why do we have people think he's a top 5 all-time great heavyweight when he hasn't even had a career or had a fight of that type of significance? I mean, the 2 wins over Tyson Fury. I mean, he won the undisputed title from Fury, rightfully so, because he was the better man both times. But does it put him in the same category as some of the real greats that had basically proven themselves time after time after time for over, a century and a half, and some of the most significant fights in heavyweight history? Give me a break. Some of you guys are so screwed in the head over recency bias again. And here I am again, having to tell the whole world that they need to get checked for CTE in the worst way possible if they think Oleksandr Usyk is a top 5 heavyweight of all time. I mean, where are you going to put him? We're going to knock off, and why you're doing it? I've asked this question. Nobody has the balls to answer. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll go ahead and confront this the next time Oleksandr Usyk fights. Word is he's going to fight the winner of Dubois Parker, which is fine with me. He gets a belt back. I think he wipes the floor with the winner anyways. But to put him as an all-time great heavyweight when his heavyweight resume doesn't even stack up, it's there's some questions that you guys have to have some balls to answer. And no, I'm not talking about hypotheticals where a prime Usyk beats a prime Lennox Lewis, or Usyk beats a prime George Foreman, like some of you guys think it's going to happen. That doesn't work that way. I mean, if you think it works that way, get off the app, go get checked for CTE, bring me the results, and I'll help you out the best way I possibly could. Because as great as Oleksandr Usyk is, and he's damn great, I'll give him that, he's not an all-time great heavyweight in that regard. No way, not even close. I'm not sure even cracks the top 20 because he hasn't had a full heavyweight career yet. Some of you guys in the community with this recency bias just crack me up. I swear. Actually, you did me a favor when I talked about this because I got a sweat and now my voice is starting to come back a little bit. Now I'm going to do some revisionist history for you, young guns over here. especially in the community who still think Oleksandr Usyk is greater than Larry Holmes, because it was 33 years ago in Atlantic City where Larry Holmes turned back the hands of time and put on a jabbing clinic on Ray Mercer in Atlantic City to a unanimous decision win. I've always said when it comes to Larry Holmes, the most criminally underrated heavyweight of all time, because when you talk about the all-time greats, this guy gets overlooked. I get it. He came after Ali, and we know anyone that comes after Muhammad Ali was going to have some giant shoes to fill. And as great as Larry Holmes was, and he was phenomenally great, he could never fill Ali's shoes. I mean, he had a bit of a different approach. He was more blue collar, more of the grit and grind, earn it the hard way. But Larry Holmes, on this 33 years ago, showed the world why he was genuinely great when he just put on a jabbing clinic on Ray Mercer. He was a 2-1 underdog going into this fight because, he was 41 years old. Was basically 3 years removed from getting obliterated by Mike Tyson, and people thought Mercer was going to do the same after Ray Mercer just destroyed Tommy Morrison like 5 months before. They say the last thing to go in a fighter is a punch. I beg to add this. One thing that will never go in a fighter, you can be 20, you can be 50, whatever, your brain smarts. And I always said, when it comes to brain smarts, top 10 all time, Larry Holmes is it. And he showed it here. He basically, actually the first minute of the fight looked like Ray Mercer was going to win because, he peppered Holmes with a small jab, and Mercer just wobbled all over the place. Holmes wobbled all over the place. But after the first round ended, Larry Holmes went back to his bread and butter, the left jab, slowed the pace down, got Mercer to fight at his pace. And as Mercer was trying to come in, Holmes standing in the corner, bam, bam. Here comes the left jab, bam. Just peppered Ray Mercer with left jabs all night long. And from the second round on, it was basically a jabbing clinic. And basically in round 9, when he really started to feel himself, not only is he peppering Mercer with jabs and right hands, and looked like for a minute he hurt Ray Mercer, which was something that was unthinkable at the time because of Mercer's chin. Larry Holmes basically turned back the hands of time and just dominated the undefeated Ray Mercer. Now, let me remind you, before this fight, everybody was talking about Evander Holyfield, Ray Mercer fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship while overlooking Larry Holmes. And basically, Larry Holmes just said whatever. From the second round on in this fight, dominated the fight, show the world how experience works, why it's important to have a great left jab in the sport of boxing, and put it to full display. It basically was like a clinic. I mean, I get it. Ray Mercer was always there to be hit, but doesn't matter. As long as you have a left jab, you can beat anybody at any age. Larry Holmes did that 33 years ago in Atlantic City. It got him the title shot against Evander Holyfield 4 months later. It turned out to be a better than expected fight. Holmes won 3 of the last 4 rounds against Holyfield. Problem was he lost 7 of the first 8. But it was a much better fight. And Larry Holmes' second career, even though he didn't win the title, much, much better, much more credible than you would think. Even the 2 title losses to Evander Holyfield and Oliver McCall gave a very, very good account of himself. Why? It's because his experience in the ring matters more than anything else. We talk about the most cerebral fighters of all time. Larry Holmes is up there because he knew the ropes inside and out. Ring generalship, the left jab, how to use it, that was Larry Holmes. And he showed it 33 years ago today when he turned back the hands of time as a 2-1 underdog to stun the undefeated Ray Mercer, who was a 2-1 favorite, and eventually had a fight with Evander Holyfield locked up for the title. Larry Holmes obviously ruined those plans. That's why Larry Holmes is an all-time great. I mean, before that, the 7.5-year reign as champ, 20 successful title defenses, fought everyone, ducked no one, and was basically the man when he ruled the heavyweight division. That's why he's an all-time great, still criminally underrated because nobody talks about him enough. And another one for you tidbits out here. This was 32 2 years ago, actually exactly 32 years ago today at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. This was James Toney demolishing the very tough Iran Barkley. And I mean, he just made light work of him. I mean, fight was over basically after the first minute when Toney started picking Barkley's face apart with a jab. And anything Barkley did, Toney did better. It was a case of 2-1, 3-1 in any exchanges. Toney just put the combinations together, used the great shoulder roll as he always does against the ropes, make Barkley miss, make him pay, put the beating on him until the fight was stopped at the end of the 9th round by Barkley's trainer, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, because Barkley's face was just turned inside out and he had no chance. But this fight was just symbolic of just how surreally great James Toney could have been had he put his full mind and full work ethic into what he did. Because James Toney had the talent to be successful, especially in the middle and middleweight divisions. I mean, you saw when he knocked out Michael Nunn in 91. And we saw it here in 90. This fight with Iran Barkley. The dude was just a thing of beauty. I mean, nothing flashy, just subtle stuff. Just simple miss, make you pay. As he said in a virtual video with Antonio Tarver several years ago, it was slip and stay in the pocket and bang you out of there. That's what James Toney did, and that's what he did to Iran Barkley. This was probably the closest thing to a perfect performance you're ever going to see. I mean, I've seen a lot of pretty darn good and great performances, but this one was the closest thing to perfection I ever saw. I mean, Iran Barkley could not get going this night, and Iran Barkley beat the great Thomas Hearns twice. Think about it. He beat the great Thomas Hearns twice, and James Toney just dusts him off like Barkley didn't even belong in the same ring as him. And that's just that fact he did it, laid a beating on him on top of it. And of course, the two had wild, build up with all kinds of I'll kill you threats both ways. By the end, it was James Toney who delivered the thrashing to Iran Barkley. I mean, but this showed just how great James Toney could have been. We know the story with him. Never could stay disciplined. And because of it, he always had up and down the scales. The tipping point, of course, the year and a half later when he fought Roy Jones, lost 18 pounds and just was given a boxing lesson. But still, from 91 to 94, when he reigned as the champion at middleweight and super middleweight, in terms of skill, just pure skill level. Forget all the other stuff right now. Just pure skills. Few, if any, maybe Pernell Whitaker had the skills that James Toney had. Because James Toney was just immensely skilled and surreally talented. Actually had natural gifts. And when he beat Iran Barkley in 1993, he thrusted himself to challenge Pernell Whitaker for the top spot in the pound-for-pound rankings, although I thought he never got there because Whitaker had the longevity and body of work. But that just shows you just how great and perfect James Toney was on that night, and just how surreally great James Toney could have been had he stayed disciplined, had he taken himself more seriously than he did. Instead of just relying on just the sheer talent he had, he would have been something more special than what he was. I mean, he's an all-time great still. He's an all-time great, Hall of Famer, well-deserved. Came back in 2003 with a great win over Vasily Jirov. But James Toney, I thought, could have been much, much more than what he could have been had James Toney stayed on a disciplined arrow. And that's what his trainer then, Bill Miller, tried to do with him. But again, that relationship soured after a while. Man, I do miss James Toney, that version of James Toney, because that night in 93, I thought we was going to see a second coming of some of the great middleweights we saw in the 80s. And when he got dusted off by Roy Jones in 94, and what turned out that, James Toney didn't take had all the kinds of weight cuts or whatever it is, I think just shows, why it's important to stay disciplined in and out of the ring. I mean, I think I point to a guy like Bernard Hopkins, because there's been all kinds of Toney and Hopkins comparisons in those weight classes, understandably so. Biggest difference, Bernard Hopkins had a work ethic. It took everything seriously, was always a step ahead of the game. If James Toney would have had that work ethic, James Toney would have been a much, much, much different fighter and a much, much, much greater fighter in history had he stayed on a straight and narrow. That's the difference. Boy, I miss those days so much. Now we're stuck with some of this, and even the pre-fight hypes are just, sometimes I wonder why I still stay a fan. I deal with a lot of you guys. I love you, hell of you guys, but sometimes the sport cracks me up a lot because of how this sport became so fixated on the theatrics versus the fight, and we have low quality fights as a result. So, but what can you say? I mean, that's why I talk about historical perspectives, because people call myself an old head. Let me remind you, this is stuff I lived, that my two eyes saw, and I went by what my two eyes saw. So you guys understand what came during my time, before my time, to what we have now. Because boxing wasn't invented today. It certainly wasn't. It wasn't invented when I was born in 1978. No, it wasn't. Because that's why you see me talking about fights before my time when I do. At some point, people need to stop worrying about the recency bias, what they see firsthand, and just do a deep, deep, deep look at history, not just in boxing, but in all sports. I mean, I see people in the NFL guilty of this. I see people in the NBA guilty of this when I cover both sports. Maybe do some research. Instead of saying who's greater, who's better, just do some research on how it was then and how it came to now. Because the sport wasn't just, these sports were just made together overnight. A lot of you guys people in these communities think this. And that's where I sit there and literally want to hit the pause button on a bunch of you guys, because you guys think sports was just created overnight. It doesn't work that way. I mean, I was in a chat, an NBA chat the other night, and then some people trying to talk about, I guess had to do with, something in Toronto. And I guess some people got worked up, and I had to remind people it was a Canadian who invented basketball way back in the day. I mean, some people need to chill out when it comes to today versus the past. I mean, I don't mind doing the comparisons. I don't get into the debates of who's better, because there's so much criteria, so much things to consider when you think about then to now. I mean, we have people today especially in Cincinnati, who are guilty of this. Basically, everybody in Cincinnati is guilty of this, except myself. You go into the stat sheets, go into the screenshots, go into these video cropping apps like TikTok or whatever the frick they call them, and try to put their athletes on a pedestal they have no business being on, and they don't even deserve. Stats don't do anything. Screenshots is something a 3-year-old can do. And video crop videos, the only thing a video crop tells me is somebody can pick up a football and throw it. Somebody can pick up a basketball and shoot it. Somebody can pick up a boxing glove and throw punches. And you know who did all 3 of those at one point? This guy. Do you see me bragging about it? No. I'm 47, all right? I'm not gonna act like what I did in my younger years is something I can laugh at or brag about years later, because I amounted to nothing. Okay? You guys in Cincinnati, start with you guys in Cincinnati first. You guys need to chill out. Go live in a freezer for about a month, because you guys need to. All you guys in the boxing community who are now so fixated on putting every fighter today on an all-time pedestal that don't have a business being on, chill out. Actually do some real research before you open your mouth about whether you put fighters in ranking systems. That's why I don't partake in them. And that's why I piggyback off of respected analyst Al Bernstein when he says this, that there's no criteria for the rankings, because nobody knows what the real set criteria is. It comes from the fact that some supposed site had Oleksandr Usyk as the 4th greatest heavyweight of all time, which is trashed that list. So I said this before, I've said this many times. If you're gonna rank someone, let's ask this question: what's your criteria? Because we always ask this. Are you consistent with your criteria? More than likely not, because a lot of you guys put your ranking systems based on what you like and what you see, and you don't know how to be biased. Be unbiased. What was the circumstances during their times and their success, especially in the NFL and the NBA, where we know in the NFL and the NBA, all kinds of rule changes, all kinds of, you know, how the game is, how the athletes are from then to now, the versatility. You could probably say that, especially in the quarterback position in the NFL, there's probably more expected of them now than it was back then. I mean, people get in these. I know for the longest time the hot debate was, of course, Joe Montana and Tom Brady. I love the hell out of both quarterbacks. And I'll personally admit I'll always be biased toward Joe Montana. I'll admit it right now. But question is, what is your criteria for all-time rankings? I see all these lists. I see all your lists. I do see it. I get it. But maybe instead of saying, this is my list, at least tell us what your criteria is. Because if you're not telling me or anyone what your criteria is for any of these all-time lists, whatever it is not a good look. Because how the hell are you going to compare somebody from the 60s, somebody like Johnny Unitas, who's a standout guy during the Baltimore Colts, to a guy today because I'm even seeing people in Cincinnati compare Joe Burrow to Johnny Unitas. What's the criteria? The fact that guys are Cincinnati homers who are still stuck up on Skyline Chili's, alcohol, heroin, and criminal records? I'm not fooled. Give me a break. Everybody in these communities, I'll tell you this. Let's just appreciate what we have and not get into these all-time comparisons, because there's no set criteria. There is no real criteria. Because I struggle to understand why they feel the need after they see a couple games or a couple highlights on a social media app to put their favorite athletes on pedestals that they don't have business being on, and can't explain why they think they do. We know it's favoritism. We know they're being biased. I get it. But some people in these communities I deal with, especially the ones in Cincinnati, especially the ones in combat sports, especially MMA with Conor McGregor fans. Don't get me started with him. A lot of stuff's going to be needing to change. And let's just sit back and enjoy it. They're there for our entertainment, not there for us to circumvent or make a big hubbub over what we see is great. Because it seems like every time we see a great athlete put on a great performance or a great play, oh my God, it's the greatest play ever. Oh my God, it's the greatest thing I ever seen. Chill. Because we get those all the time, all over the place. And not by what you see, it's all over the place. Instead of wasting your time, with all of these phone apps or whatever, with these crop videos, stat sheets, whatever, especially in Cincinnati. Maybe do a little research and do some understanding on how this came about. That might be the first step to you guys to actually expand and become better. That's why I pick and choose who I talk to. That's why I pick and choose who I deal with. Because a lot of you guys sometimes try to bring me into this weird, gullible type, I don't know, propaganda. I'll use that word, propaganda, because that's what you guys are trying to sell. Propaganda that I'm not going to buy. Because a lot of this propaganda, I remember when I did this way back when, not the recent social media, way back when, I get sold on all these ideologies. I just sit back and look at you and say, whatever. I'm still going to be the same way. Because I never, ever thought about all-time rankings or athlete rankings or athlete stats, because stat comparisons are just absolutely moronic. Player A versus player B. Just because player B puts up better numbers than player A doesn't necessarily mean player B is better than player A. Where's the criteria for these stats? How do they get those stats? And do you even consider other things like, especially both the NFL and NBA, schemes, play calling, ability to make those around them better? Because I swear, I feel like I feel like I should do a show on this one time about stats and I have an open dialogue for you guys to interact with me because every day I see all of this and I just laugh at people because they try to use the stat comparisons to put theirs with somebody, and I'm sitting here looking at these stats like, okay, I guess what's the site called? Stat Reference or whatever like that. Whatever. But damn, my views are coming up. I guess I got to keep this one going a little bit. So maybe I should just devote a show soon on these so-called stat nerds who I don't know where the frick they're getting these stats from because anybody knows me knows last summer. That's past summer. Summer before last, I went at a PFF guy, a fellow named Sam Monson, who's one of the biggest moronic, ugly-looking dudes from Ireland who's more uglier than the word ugly himself. And then when I called him out on his criteria, he decided to get on a verbal offense with me, and I just walked away from it. Because guys like these stat gurus, here's the thing with stat gurus. They wear glasses as big as my head. They base everything off their what they see on the television, pick everything up what they see off the when they show the displays on the television set with the scoreboards and individuals, and act like that's the way to go. That's why I don't deal with stat gurus, because I'm a stats major myself, and I'll tell you this: I as much as I love to interpret stats, I stay away from it because it's not worth breaking my brain up over. It's absolutely not. Why? It's not worth it. I mean, a lot of you guys can go ahead and have at it. I use simple analysis because when I covered boxing for the longest time, a lot of people like to use punch stats. Punch stat doesn't do anything because a landed punch can be a love tap, or a landed punch could be pulling back as hard as you can and putting a fist through a brick wall. That's a landed punch. There's so much context that everyone in the sports community blatantly and intentionally ignore. And I mean blatantly and intentionally ignore when it comes to player comparisons. Because context matters. You guys want to say stats don't lie? Actually, someone tried to tell me this ideology that Drew Brees was a greater quarterback all time than Joe Montana because of stat sheets. I mean, I love Drew Brees. And of course, he's going to have the greater stat sheets because the NFL was different when Drew Brees played versus when Joe Montana played. I mean, come on. I'm glad I ran off on this rant because it actually made me feel better. I feel like I got my voice back a little bit. I had an adventurous week from leaving my job with a throat just ready to explode to when I came home that night, wound up having to sleep in my work clothes and steel-toe shoes because I was getting sick like crazy, having to text my mom for a thermometer, having to make a drive to one of the urgent cares over here to get a test while I was still cold, not generating heat in my body. I was still cold to where I was getting my positive test to where when I come home, I try to get this thing going. I still couldn't get warm. And it come late Tuesday night. Oh boy, I was a hot mess. So what I do, I check into the ER. They fix my diagnosis, fix my meds, and now for the first time in about a week, I'm starting to feel myself a little bit. And I had a week I just want to forget because what I went through, I wish nobody had it. Being diagnosed with flu and strep simultaneously. It was considered when he found out that your lymph nodes was swollen. Ugh. I mean, I couldn't even eat or drink adequately right for about a day and a half. I mean, I was so weak, I was bedridden. I mean, my goodness. Sheesh. My God. Let's see, check some here real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and call this show a night. And I'm glad to be back. For those of you who sent me the get well wishes, I thank you very much because I went through a one-way trip to Satan's house and I thought I was never going to get out. Now the dark cloud is starting to escape and I'm still here. So that will wrap it up tonight. I got going to be on the NFL gridiron here in a bit. I'll be back tomorrow night. Mitch, I might devote a big chunk of the show to Stack Gurus because they want my attention. I can go ahead and do that. And among many other things. I have 2 other shows on top of it tomorrow. Of course, the big fight tomorrow night for my 5 followers. It's Keyshawn Davis and Davis Berinchyk. I'll be doing a live watch along with an individual from overseas, and I'll also be tweeting it on my X platform. But until then, hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 13th of February 2025. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. And as always, I can officially now say this for myself. Make self-care your number 1 priority. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Take care of yourself first before you take care of everything else. Good night, and God bless.